Hi again, guys. So now we're going to cover chapter 8 for nutrition, and that's the chapter on vitamins. You ready? Let's rock. Share my screen. And let's go. All right, vitamins, the vitamins. Try to make this fun if I can. So what are we going to do? We're going to learn about how vitamins differ from energy nutrients and how fat-soluble vitamins are different from water-soluble. We're going to talk about the roles of the vitamins, deficiency symptoms, toxicity symptoms. Yes, you can be toxic from vitamins, and food sources for the fat-soluble vitamins. We'll identify the main roles, deficiency symptoms, toxicity symptoms, and food sources of water-soluble vitamins. And we're going to be able to describe phytochemicals and functional foods and how they defend us against chronic diseases. So what are vitamins? Vitamins don't give us energy, but they facilitate certain processes in the body. They make things happen. We don't need them in the same quantities that we need energy yielding nutrients, much smaller, but we got to have them. Vital for life, they're organic, and they're available from food. Let me say that again. They're available from food. You don't need supplements. So, and organic, the word organic means carbon containing, living. So, when you read a label that says organic, I'm organic, so are you. So are vitamins, so are plants and animals. Anyway, you get the idea. And research supporting the role of vitamin-rich foods in protecting against certain types of cancer and heart disease. It's true. So bioavailability, that means how much of what you take in is available to be readily absorbed and used by your body. And there are lots of factors that influence bioavailability. The efficiency of your digestive tract, previous things that you've eaten and your general state of nutrition, foods that you consume at the same time as the vitamins, because sometimes they enhance absorption, sometimes they block absorption, how you prepare your food, and then where are you getting that nutrient from? Is it naturally occurring, like from food? Is it synthetic, or is it fortified? Okay, synthetic would be man-made. Fortified means we've added vitamins into something that wouldn't normally have them. So how do we minimize the nutrient losses in foods? Fruits, vegetables, and juices need to be refrigerated, because if they're not, there's something that can happen called enzymatic destruction. Enzymes will break down the vitamins in them and they're useless. Need to protect them from light and from air. That's why milk is in an opaque container that protects riboflavin. If fruits and vegetables are cut, they have to be in airtight wrappers. Why? Have you ever noticed if you put fruit just in a bowl and put it in the fridge once it's been cut, it's going to turn brown, right? Chemical reaction. It's an enzymatic reaction, actually, and it's basically destroying whatever nutritional value is in there. When you cook things, this is the other thing. Sometimes people will cook the heck out of vegetables. You don't need to cook the heck out of them because you're cooking out the nutrients. Steaming them is the best. And you want to always wash them before you cut them or peel them, right? To prevent vitamin losses. Cook fruits and vegetables in a microwave or stir fry or steam them. Those are the best ways to do it. And the water that you use to steam them in, you can use for soups or gravies or those kinds of things. All right, let's go through fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E, K. Fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E, K. Start with vitamin A and beta-carotene. It's very rare to find an individual who is satisfied with the 3 forms of vitamin A, or in other words, to have enough of it. There are 3 forms that serve different functions: retinol, retinol, and retinoic acid. If anybody ever heard of something called Retin A, that's actually an ointment that was used for wrinkles and for acne back in the day. And it's basically vitamin A or a derivative, one of the forms of vitamin A. And then we have beta-carotene. Beta-carotene comes from plants and it's a precursor to vitamin A. So it comes before vitamin A, okay? So what's vitamin A for? It does a lot of things. It has to do with protein synthesis, has to do with metabolic activities of your tissue. So retinoic acid helps to activate or deactivate certain genes. That's where the acne issue came in. It affects the production of specific proteins in your body. Your eyes, right? Your eyes. Remember how Bugs Bunny ate carrots? Vitamin A, so, and beta carotene. So it helps maintain a healthy cornea. It helps your retina detect light. And it helps, any deficiencies that affect the eye's ability to adapt to changing light. So night blindness would be a symptom of a deficiency of vitamin A. When you are in bright light, like I'm in bright light right now, your pupils constrict, right? And they adapt to the fact there's too much light or a lot of light. If I go from this to a dark room or get out of the sun, my pupils will then dilate to let more light in so that I can see. Vitamin A and beta carotene. So vitamin A's role for protein synthesis, cell differentiation, and for immunity too. So vitamin A works at a very basic genetic level to help promote protein synthesis and cell differentiation. In other words, when your body reproduces cells, they can start out kind of being similar and then they differentiate into more specific types of cells. Vitamin A helps with that. Helps maintain epithelial cells, and that's, smooth tissue. And immunity, you got to have enough vitamin A to maintain a good state of immune response. For men, helps you make sperm, and it promotes normal fetal growth and development when you get pregnant. So you've got to have sufficient vitamin A for development of the nervous system, the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, the skeleton, bones, eyes, and ears. So beta carotene is actually an antioxidant, and you probably have heard that before. It protects things that are vulnerable to oxygen. So if oxygen can attack certain compounds, beta carotene is an antioxidant, and it protects against that oxidation by oxygen. It triggers something in your body called free radicals. Free radicals will, break things down, damage your cell structures or impair the function of your cells. So, and believe it or not, these kinds of changes like oxidation and free radical damage are linked to certain types of cancer and heart disease. And there's no recommended daily allowance for beta carotene, but food is the best source. Food's the best source for all things, okay, just to be clear. If you do have a deficiency in vitamin A, you're not going to have symptoms until you have absolutely depleted your stores, because fat-soluble vitamins are stored in your body, okay? Your liver particularly stores fat-soluble vitamins. Your cornea can start to get thickened or hardened, and you can become blind. Skin will get dry, rough, and scaly. Your salivary glands make saliva. They'll dry up, harden. You'll have a decreased immune response and reduced protection against the measles, although you should be vaccinated. And then there's toxicity. You can't have too much or too little, pretty much of anything, moderation. Little kids are usually the most vulnerable because they don't have the same requirements as adults. And teratogenic risk, and in other words, something that's teratogenic will do damage to an unborn child. And so toxicity can cause real problems, abnormal fetal development, and severe birth defects. And believe it or not, long-term excessive intake of vitamin A can lead to osteoporosis, risk of hip fracture, all kinds of fractures, not just hip. Beta carotene conversion and toxicity. So with beta carotene does not rapidly convert to vitamin A, but if you do have too much of it, you can get a yellow tinge to your skin, right? So a little different from jaundice. Where do we find vitamin A? Vitamin A is found only in foods of animal origin. In other words, things that come from animals. So liver, fish oil, milk, cheese, fortified cereals. They're fortified, so we're putting the vitamin A in. Skim milk does not have vitamin A unless it's fortified, because when we take out the fat, we're taking out the vitamin A. And surprise, fast food, they usually don't have vitamin A. Beta carotene is found in plants with the deep orange pigments and dark green vegetables. So spinach, kale, those types of things, right? Beets are great for beta carotene, carrots, deep orange. There you go. So this shows the amount of beta carotene and vitamin A that's found in certain foods like spinach, sweet potatoes, apricots, bok choy, which I don't know if I've ever had that, carrots, fortified milk, and liver. And liver, you have to really have a taste for liver. It's odd. All right, next fat-soluble vitamin is vitamin D. Your body can actually synthesize it or make it, but you've got to get about 15 minutes of sunlight at least 3 times a week. So the metabolic conversion of vitamin D. So vitamin D, the precursor to it is made in your liver, and then it goes to your skin and it gets converted to a different or second precursor. And then when the sunlight hits it, it activates, right? And then it goes back to the liver and the kidneys and it converts it to an active vitamin D. If you have a problem with your liver or your kidneys, that can impair your conversion to active vitamin D. So in other words, you can be vitamin D deficient. It's a vitamin technically, but it's really a hormone. And what does it do? It targets your small intestines, your kidneys, your bones, other tissues, protects your brain from cognitive decline. It helps children grow. And vitamin D deficit, if you don't have enough of it, can cause high blood pressure, diabetes, some cancers, and mores. Look at that typo, and more. Vitamin D works with other nutrients in bone growth and maintenance. So you have osteoblasts and osteoclasts that build bone tissue. So you need vitamin D for that. Vitamin D is necessary for you to absorb calcium and phosphorus and their electrolytes. We'll talk about them. And the more your bones absorb them, the stronger and more dense they get. So they're less likely to break. And also vitamin D can help with your immune system regulation. If you don't have enough vitamin D, rickets. You don't see rickets much anymore. So children get rickets. Usually they have inadequate food. So, usually third world countries, you'll see a lot of this, not enough sunlight. And what happens is their bones, like when you look at their legs will be bowed instead of being straight up and down. They'll kind of look like this. And all their bones get weak. Osteomalacia is the adult form of rickets. Sailors that were out at sea for a long time back in the day would oftentimes get rickets because they weren't getting enough sunlight, stormy seas, and they weren't getting and vitamin D deficiency is a risk factor for osteoporosis. And again, you don't want that. On the other hand, you can be toxic. If you have too much vitamin D, your blood calcium is going to increase, okay? And this is important. You have a gland, you have the thyroid gland, and then you have parathyroid glands. Parathyroid glands next to the thyroid make something called calcitonin, and calcitonin keeps a level or a concentration of how much calcium is in your bone, how much calcium is in your serum, your blood. And if you're toxic with vitamin D, it can actually force the concentration of calcium in the blood to rise, and it actually can precipitate, in other words, cluster together or aggregate in soft tissues and form stones, kidney stones, and they're painful. Also, blood vessels can become calcified. So calcium precipitates and kind of glunks up and lines the inside of the blood vessels. It is the most toxic of all the vitamins. People would never think, oh, too much vitamin, no big deal. It is a big deal, all right? And so you got to make sure that your food sources are within like normal limits. And, you don't need supplements. But if you do take supplements, you want to make sure that, the concentrated form is not what you're taking so that you're not getting excessive vitamin D. You must have sunlight, okay? And so it says here 5 to 10 minutes. I tell people 15 minutes of sun 3 times a week. Really, that's your minimum. The darker your skin, you need more time. And anything that's a sunscreen with a higher number than an SPF 8 will actually stop the synthesis of vitamin D. Now, I'm not telling you to not wear sunscreen, because if you're very, very white, fair skinned and you burn, that's dangerous too, because that's a precursor to skin cancer. However, you need to get some sun, right? So moderation again, 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're not going to burn. Low levels of vitamin D are very common in certain parts of the world, and also in the winter months. Obviously, not as much sun. Few animal foods provide sources of it. So like eggs, liver, butter, some fatty fish, fortified milk. There's always vitamin D in milk, some margarine, cereals. Infant formulas are fortified, and milk fortification for children is the best way to meet the needs of vitamin D intake. So kids need milk, adults not so much. Now we'll move on to vitamin E. Vitamin E is an antioxidant, just like vitamin A, or beta carotene rather. It protects other substances from being oxidized, protects lipids, so fats and other components of your cell membrane. And it's really super good at preventing oxidation of polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? Which they're the good ones and you need them. Also protects your lungs from air pollutants, but you can be toxic. So one of the main symptoms of vitamin E toxicity is erythrocyte hemolysis. And that is the destruction, like self-destruction of red blood cells. And it's usually seen in premature infants. In adults, they can have loss of muscle coordination and reflexes, ataxic movements that are like weird, jerky, involuntary, problems with vision, problems with speech. And also vitamin E toxicity is associated with diseases that cause fat malabsorption. Back in the day, people were being given high doses of vitamin E in the thought that, you know, its antioxidant properties were very beneficial, not realizing toxicity could occur and people were becoming very ill. This was back when I first became a nurse, true story. So where do you find vitamin E? It's in a lot of foods, vegetable oils, but really shouldn't be using vegetable oils, wheat germ oil, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, right? But vitamin E is destroyed by heat processing, right? So in other words, you get the most bang for your buck in vitamin E if it's something fresh. So fruits, vegetables, right, are the best. Then last but not least, we have vitamin K. Vitamin K is one of the many things that you have inside of you that contributes to your blood's ability to clot. So if you get cut, you don't just bleed to death. You need vitamin K to activate something called prothrombin. There's also fibrinogen. You have 12 clotting factors. There are lots of processes that take place for your blood to clot. You must have vitamin K stored in the liver, okay? If you are missing any of the factors that you need for clotting, including vitamin K, or deficient in it, you can hemorrhage, right? You will find vitamin K is synthesized in the intestines, right? So that's where it gets absorbed in the body. But intestinal synthesis is not the best way or the only way to get your vitamin K. You need it from foods too. This chart goes through the clotting process. I'm not going to get into this. For those of you that do go on to nursing, you will need to understand why vitamin K is essential. And fun fact, vitamin K, phytonadione, it's called also, is the antidote for warfarin, Coumadin, an anticoagulant. So fun fact. What happens if you're deficient? It's very rare, but it can happen and it can be fatal. So conditions will occur where fat won't be absorbed, fat malabsorption syndrome. And then there are lots of interactions between meds and vitamin K, like antibiotics. And I already talked about the anticoagulants. Vitamin K. When babies are born, there are two things that a baby must receive. And this isn't on the test, but this is a fun fact. They must get an injection, single dose of vitamin K intramuscularly into their thigh muscles, the vastus lateralis, because they don't have any stored and their concentrations are low when they're born. So we don't want them to bleed. And so we give them a dose of that. Very rare to be toxic with vitamin K. High doses can really mess with anticoagulants. Just like I said, it's the antidote. So if we need you to be anticoagulated because of atrial fibrillation, and you're taking in food sources that have lots of vitamin A, like the green leafy vegetable, or vitamin K rather, the green leafy vegetables, then your anticoagulant levels won't be therapeutic, and that's a problem. Green leafy vegetables are the #1 choice for vitamin K. Cabbage and the cabbage family, some vegetable oils. Iceberg lettuce, it's got a little bit. Green beans have some, but your green leafy vegetables, and believe it or not, that includes broccoli, cauliflower, kale, right? They have lots and lots. Spinach, lots of vitamin K. So that's it for fat soluble. Now we have water soluble vitamins. So water soluble vitamins, first of all, the B vitamins, all of them. So they help your body use fuel. In other words, each of the 8, then there's 8 of them, each of the 8 B vitamins is part of what we call a coenzyme. But then active forms of 5 of them release energy from carbohydrates and proteins and fat. And those 5 are thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, and biotin. Okay. Coenzyme containing B6 helps with amino acid metabolism, and folate together with B12 helps cells multiply. So you need the B vitamins for the production of red blood cells in your body. And a coenzyme is a little molecule that combines with an enzyme that activates it, right? So it needs that enzyme to activate. A deficiency of any particular B vitamin is not usually something that we find easily. There are, examples that are contrary to that. We'll talk about some of them. Thiamine, particularly, thiamine deficiency is called beriberi, and it's associated with polishing rice. I even had to look that up. So when rice is nice and white and pretty, they actually remove the bran and the thiamine from the grains of rice. So it looks great, but there's no thiamine in it. If you don't get enough niacin, you can get something called pellagra. And for people that live on mostly corn, right, that's a problem because they're not really getting the B vitamins. Deficiency can happen if certain foods are made from refined grains, and that's your primary source of diet. So we can enrich the foods or fortify them to make sure that the people are getting enough of the B vitamins, like breads and cereals are fortified and enriched. But again, supplements are not the best way. So the best way is food. Get it from your food. Thiamine, you need thiamine for all energy metabolism, and you need it for your nerves and muscles to function. You see a deficiency in thiamine a lot with malnourished people, homeless people, alcoholics, right? They get something called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is very bad. The cognitive functioning, they are confused, combative, agitated. It's almost like somebody that's got an end stage Alzheimer's dementia, right? It's very, very bad. And there's irreversible, by the way. Thiamine occurs in small quantities in most nutritious foods, like pork has a lot of it. Bread, cereals, those kinds of things, oatmeal, the whole grain or enriched. And you can't store the B vitamins, okay? Cannot store them. Remember, you can store the fat-soluble, but the water-soluble vitamins do not get stored in your body, so you got to get them every day. That's important. Riboflavin, that's a coenzyme in energy metabolism. When you're pregnant, you need more. Athletes that burn a lot of energy need more. Usually you get it from milk products, right? So yogurt, cheese, those kinds of things, and enriched grains. Light can actually destroy it, but ordinary cooking does not, right? So you can't cook the heck out of it and cook the riboflavin out. Niacin. So niacin helps also with energy metabolism. And it can be, your body can actually make some niacin from protein that you have. Certain amino acids like tryptophan can convert to niacin. There are certain supplements that can cause something called a niacin flush. So we sometimes give niacin to people to lower their cholesterol, and they will take the pill and literally within minutes will get a feeling of like flushed, hot, red. And the solution is to take one adult aspirin 30 minutes before they take the niacin, and that can counteract the flush. But large doses of it, again, some is good, too much is not good, can cause liver damage and also symptoms of diabetes, which you don't want. Where do you get niacin? Meat, poultry, fish, legumes, enriched in whole grains. Some vegetables, not as much. Again, they don't get cooked out of food. They're pretty heat resistant, which is good. Then we have pantothenic acid and biotin. So pantothenic acid stimulates growth and energy, and it's involved in your body's ability to synthesize lipids, neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, steroid hormones, and hemoglobin. So you need these things for the production of red blood cells. It's everywhere, or they are everywhere. Pantothenic acid and biotin are everywhere. Pantothenic acid, you don't need a supplement for that. Vitamin B6. Fatty acid, proteins, amino acids, and carbs helps metabolize them. It helps convert tryptophan, which is found, by the way, in milk, turkey, in high amounts. Your body can convert it to niacin. And it's an important role in making hemoglobin, right? And neurotransmitters, like I said before, serotonin, the endorphins, the happy chemicals, dopamine. And it also assists in releasing glucose from glycogen. That's kind of a long story because your liver can store glucose, but it stores it in the form of glycogen. And in order for it to convert it to glucagon, you need the vitamin B6 to help convert. Food sources: meats, fish, poultry, potatoes, some vegetables and fruits. B6 can get cooked out of foods. So again, when you're making vegetables, the best way is to steam them so that they're not mush, right? And you're not cooking the nutrients out of them. Folate or folic acid, need that for cell division very much. It's very important for pregnant women. And if you're thinking about getting pregnant, you'll see doctors recommend folic acid. It's very vulnerable to interactions with alcohol and drugs. In other words, people that drink excessively or use drugs actually have decreased absorption of folic acid, and you will see them on supplements regularly. Medications can affect the status of folic acid, and smoking is not good for you. It can affect it as well. Like I said, for babies, for fetal development, folic acid is critical for the brain and spinal cord to develop. And if you're planning on having kids or planning on getting pregnant or are pregnant, you should definitely either supplement it or eat a good amount of folic acid fortified foods. Where do you get it? Liver, legumes, beets, which I hate, green leafy vegetables, oranges, and cantaloupe. Again, this is one of the ones, if you overcook it, you're going to cook the folate out of it. And here are some good sources of folate and how much is in those different sources. Vitamin B12 helps folate with the cell division. If you have a deficiency of B12 or folate, then it stops your blood cells' ability to mature. So your body can make erythrocytes, for example, but they can't mature to red blood cells. So you'll be anemic. It's got a huge effect on the nervous system. You will see people deficient in vitamin B12. It's called pernicious anemia. It's a little different than all the other anemias because vitamin B12, in order for you to absorb it, there's something called intrinsic factor and extrinsic factor. One is in your stomach and the other is in your intestine, respectively. Gastric surgery can reduce the amount that you have, and aging also. If you don't have intrinsic and extrinsic factors, you can't absorb vitamin B12 from the foods that you eat. You can get a big red beefy tongue. You'll have severe anemia, hemoglobin, hematocrit very low, red blood cell count low, and a lot of neurological symptoms like cognitive changes, which they're irreparable. You can't fix them. Oh, look, I already talked about intrinsic factor and the reasons why. If you don't have enough intrinsic factor, you're going to need vitamin B12 injections forever, right? You get it from animal foods, see? And this is another, not to hate on anybody, and is only my opinion, doesn't reflect the opinion of Atlantic Cape Community College nor any of its affiliates, but animal foods have these things in them, right? People that are vegan, strictly vegan, are oftentimes anemic, right? And for many reasons, they don't get enough protein or iron and they don't get enough B12. So you got to make sure that you're getting enough intake. And lacto-ovo vegetarians, I love that name. So lacto meaning they'll drink milk, ovo meaning they'll eat eggs. Some vegetarians will eat eggs and drink milk and eat cheese and those kinds of things. So that's okay. So they usually will get enough of it from that. But people that are strict vegans are typically deficient, right? Here you go. So special risk for undetected deficiency always, okay? And they can really go for a while before we realize what's going on. And if you are a vegan, you breastfeed your newborn, the infant is at huge risk for deficiency. And that's neurological damage and anemia. So that's a big problem. And then we have the non-B vitamins. So there are compounds that are like coenzymes, right, that act to metabolize things. Inositol, choline, and carnitine. Again, they're in food, okay? Vitamin C. Vitamin C is important for the formation of something called collagen. Collagen, bone formation. It allows cells to kind of bind together. It's an antioxidant. So it protects water-soluble substances and some fat-soluble compounds from oxidation. Vitamin C helps your body absorb iron. So the two go hand in hand. Okay, very important. Vitamin C helps with amino acid metabolism. Vitamin C actually can help with stress. So your adrenal glands with epinephrine and norepinephrine, right, can actually, so they'll release epinephrine and norepinephrine when you're stressed out, and vitamin C can actually help with that. I never heard of the antihistamine thing, but okay. And cancer prevention, so far there's not any links that can be verified, let's put it that way, under research. There are lots of theories about links between vitamin C and cancers, but as of yet, nothing concrete that they've been able to prove. If you're deficient in vitamin C, symptoms can be bleeding gums. So you can have petechiae, which are little red dots, they're little hemorrhages under the skin. Your muscles can start to degenerate and deteriorate. And remember, the myocardium is the muscle that makes your heart beat. Your skin can change. It can get rough, brown, scaly, really dry. Your wounds won't heal, right? Wrinkles. Bones don't rebuild. Teeth can start to fall out. Anemia, infection, and sudden death. So what those are symptoms of is scurvy. And you don't see that much anymore either. And vitamin C, you only need 10 milligrams a day, right, to prevent that from happening. Vitamin C, big in your citrus fruits. So in other words, oranges, clementines, cantaloupe, strawberries, also in Brussels sprouts and broccoli, organ meats like liver. And iron absorption doubles or triples when you take it with something, a food that contains vitamin C, right? Amazing. And then we have phytochemicals. So phytochemicals and functional foods. Phytochemicals, you know, they are bioactive. In other words, they're very active biologically, and they're compounds that you find in plants. They help with like taste, aroma, and color. They act as antioxidants. When they're in you, they can also mimic hormones, and they can help with certain diseases, you know, suppress the development of them. There are flavonoids, carotenoids, and lycopene. Okay. So phytochemicals, flavonoids, antioxidants, they help protect you from LDL oxidating. In other words, they help reduce your bad cholesterol. They reduce the stickiness of your platelets, right, or thrombocytes, which reduces your risk for blood clots, which is good. Sources, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, herbs, spices, teas, and red wine. How about that? Carotenoids, there's some research, but it's not written in stone about its association with lowering heart disease risk. But it's found in the red and yellow pigments of plants, right? Like lycopene. And then functional foods, foods that have something that's physiologically alive and active that provides some type of a health benefit. Cranberries. Cranberries have something called an acid ash, where when you eat fresh cranberries or drink cranberry juice, not cranberry pills, they actually, the acid ash will line your bladder and protect you from UTIs. It will not cure a UTI, so you need antibiotics for that, but they can help protect you from that. Lycopene has been associated with lowering heart disease, and lutein is in almost all those eye supplements. You don't need a supplement, and it's associated with the function of your eyes, right? Your eyes being healthy. Are you dizzy yet? No, I am. That was a lot of information. So that's it for this chapter. I will see you with the next chapter. It's coming up next. All right. So see you later, alligators.